Today's video is sponsored by World of Warships. Hello and welcome to the ScatterVolt channel, and today let's go ahead and rank every single CPU you can buy right now in 2024. Even though I'm making this video in December of 2023. And that's because 2024 is going to be a big year for CPU launches, as Ryzen is going to be officially transitioning to their 8000 lineup of CPUs in the fall, and Intel is going to be unveiling their new LGA 1851 socket with 15th generation CPUs also around the same time. So what that means for all of us watching this video is that basically we're going to be left with the same CPUs, the same ones that you see from this video, for about 9 months or so. So I think it'd be smart to go ahead and rank them. That said, AMD is probably going to release some new APUs at CES 2024, but that shouldn't really affect the rankings of this video, as those new 8000 APUs will technically just be Ryzen 7000 CPUs with better integrated graphics. They won't actually be on the new architecture. So for example, if AMD comes out with a Ryzen 5 8600G, that's basically gonna be the same as a Ryzen 5 7600 in this video, as they're gonna be performing the same CPU-wise, it's just that there's much better integrated graphics on the 8600G. So I think that covers all bases. If you're looking to build a PC around one of these CPUs, then I'm basically gonna be ranking all of them off of which one is the most worth it. So without further ado, like this video if you like the audio, because I changed it up. No, like actually, look at my last video and look at this one, and if you think the audio is better in this video, let me know by giving a like on this video. And with that out of the way, here's a quick word from our sponsor. World of Warships is a free-to-play naval warfare game where new content is released every month, whether it be new ships, in-game nations, cosmetics, or even ship classes. There's always going to be some new form of content when it comes to World of Warships every month, like their upcoming Godzilla vs. Kong expansion, which is going to be coming in tangent with the new upcoming Godzilla vs. Kong movie. And I know a lot of you who are watching this are PC gamers, and I'm happy to report that World of Warships does have good graphics with some pretty advanced sea simulations, so the water effects that you see in-game should be somewhat realistic to what you'd see in real life if you were to see these huge ships going across the sea with over 40 unique maps. Gameplay-wise, there are multiple different ship classes to choose from, whether it be battleships, destroyers, aircraft carriers, cruisers, or even submarines. And one of the other cool things about World of Warships is that it's been around for a long time, meaning it has a very long-standing and passionate community. So if you don't know where to start with the game, you can contribute to any of the in-game discussions if you want to find out what ship could be best for you, say if you're first starting out. And don't worry, the game is also on mobile and console, so you can really play it anywhere. So if you want to download World of Warships, I'll have a link to it in the description below, along with this code you see here on screen, which will grant you a really huge holiday starter pack with a free ship, 300 doubloons, 1 million credits, 7 days of premium account time, as well as a host of other benefits. So once again, all of that can be found in the description below. So we're gonna start from the cheapest and work our way up. And we're gonna start with the Ryzen 5 4100, which retails at $64 right now. That is super cheap, but it's not exactly the most fantastic of CPUs, but its main strength is how cheap it is. It's a 4-core, 8-threaded CPU. It's not the fastest 4-core CPU in this video, but it gets the job done. I used it in my $400 gaming PC build guide and found that it was still surprisingly capable in 2023. And I call it kind of like a last resort CPU, because spending an extra $50 will get you a considerably better CPU to send to your gaming PC around. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in C tier, because its main strength is its price, which can also be said for the i3 12100, and this will probably go down as one of the best budget CPUs ever, because when this came out, it was basically kind of like a middle finger to AMD, because up until that point, AMD was known as the budget CPU brand. They would come out with these really awesome 4-core or 6-core CPUs on a budget, but when the 12100F or 12100 came out, it was like that one CPU that we all needed that AMD didn't have an answer for, because at the time, their cheapest CPU would have been like a 5600X at $300 that was 6 cores. and more or less was really overpriced for the time. But meanwhile, Intel's like, okay, here's a $120 4-core CPU. Eat it. And it's still really fast to this day and continues to show that cores aren't everything. Single-threaded performance is going to dictate the most as to how fast your gaming PC is going to be CPU-wise, and the 12100 continues to prove that till this day, and I'm gonna put it in A tier. Now the 4500, because like I just said, cores aren't everything, the 12100 outperforms the 4500, even though the 4500 has more cores and more threads. That's because its single-threaded performance isn't as strong as the 12100. Although I did use this CPU in my $500 gaming PC build, that was more for budgetary reasons, but alone on itself, it's not the best. I would put this in D tier because for quite literally a few more dollars, you can get a much better CPU in the form of the Ryzen 5 5500. 6 cores, 12 threads, Ryzen 5000 CPU. I think it's literally like 10 bucks more than the 4500 and it's a good bit faster. But it's still not the most fantastic CPU. But once again, kind of like the 4100, its main strength is its price. It's 100 bucks. And for a $100 CPU, it definitely gets the job done. So I'm gonna put this in B tier. Then the 4600G, well, APUs from the last generation of Ryzen CPUs on the AM4 socket are basically outdated because they use ancient integrated graphics, and GPUs have become cheap enough to a point where you can get like a 4100 with a super cheap $40 GPU and it'll outperform any 4600G, 5600G, any APU that's 4000 or 5000. So it's a waste of sand, don't even consider it. Now the 13100. I had higher expectations from this CPU when it first came out, but it's still retailing for $120, but it isn't really offering like a $30 uplift in performance over the 12100. So for that reason, I can't really recommend it because for $10 more, you can get a CPU that is more capable in my opinion than the 13100. So we're gonna put it in D tier above the 4500 because the Ryzen 5 5600 right now for $130 is going to be one of the best budget CPUs you can get, and it's also one of the most well-rounded. 6 cores, 12 threads, overclockable, and it's basically a 5600X without the X. Like if you literally look at benchmarks between the 5600 and 5600X, they're the same CPU, just with about a $20 price difference. So the 5600 is going straight into A tier. Really good CPU for the money. Now the 5600G, once again, why do we need Ryzen 5 5000 APUs in 2024? They're old, they're dinosaurs. There was a time and place for them, but that isn't the case anymore. And like I said, AMD is going to come out with their own new APU soon at CES, so it's going into the waste of sand category. Now the i5 12400. This has always been a reliable pick, and it was a solid pick for the longest time, but now in 2024, there are other CPUs that have been discounted to the point where they are better performing CPUs than the 12400, whereas say like 1 to 2 years ago, it was probably one of the only options you can get for a reliable 6-core CPU that actually performed for its price. So although it's selling for like $150 right now, the next 2 CPUs we're gonna cover destroy it in terms of performance and basically cost the same amount of money. So 12400, it is gonna get my respects. I'm gonna put it in B tier below the 5500. No, 12400 is a bit more reliable. Yeah, keep it there. Like I said, the 5600X can be had for the same price of a 12400. It's gonna be faster, but once again, I don't rate it too highly because you can get the 5600 for $20 cheaper. It's gonna be basically the same CPU, but it's still technically a better CPU than the 12400, so it's gonna get a slight ranking above it. But the CPU that I didn't expect to be this cheap, even in 2024, is the i5 12600K, specifically the KF model that doesn't feature any integrated graphics. It's selling for about $155 right now. That is excellent. That is one of the fastest CPUs you can buy under $200. It's really good. It's a beefed up 12400 and it's gonna beat out a 5600X, so I gotta put it above it, and it's only gonna cost you about $5 more. Pretty good. Oh, but this one takes the cake. This CPU I'm about to cover next technically isn't sold, at least if you live in the United States, in most major retailers, because honestly, I don't see retailers standing to make money if they ever released a Ryzen 5 7500F. Unless you're a Chad and you buy off of AliExpress, because you can find these right now actually for as low as $155, which I don't believe. They usually retail for around $175. But that said, it is by far the best budget CPU, under $200, period. It's essentially a Ryzen 5 7600 with no integrated graphics, but it's gonna save you about $40 in price. And it's really nice, especially if you wanna hop on the AM5 socket, AMD's latest generation with DDR5 RAM support on a budget. And yeah, like I said, I feel like Amazon and Newegg are scared to carry it because, like I said, they stand to make no money from it. But AliExpress always comes in clutch. So now we move on to the Ryzen 7 5700X, which is kind of an awkward CPU because it technically offers the most cores and threads for the money, under $200. But like I said, cores don't mean everything for gaming. It matters about single-threaded performance. And why bother building a new system around a Ryzen 7 5700X when you can build one around a Ryzen 5 7500F that is next generation and is going to blow it away in terms of performance? So the 5700X is only good as an upgrade CPU if you know you need a CPU with more than 6 cores for gaming, which is understandable. But I think there's a better CPU you can upgrade to later on in this video. But 5700X for the moment, I think we'll put it, wait, oh my, what? I think I messed up the rankings. No, that does not look right. The 12600K should be here. And the 5700X should be like here. Yeah, I don't know why I said the 12600K was like the second best budget CPU under $200, yet it was ranked below the 5600. That didn't make sense. My apologies for that. Okay, then 5700G, you already know, waste of sand. Now the 13400. This CPU is underwhelming because performance-wise, it's the same as a 12600K that's here in A tier, but it retails for $190, which is about $40 more expensive. So I'm gonna put this below the 13100F. Now we get to the typical Ryzen 7000 CPUs that all of us can purchase from most retailers, like the 7600 and 7600X. Both of these have come down in price a lot, and even though the 7500F would be my pick over both of these, pricing-wise, they're still very strong, and they outperform nearly all of the CPUs around it. Which is why I'm gonna give both of them a really good ranking right here below the 12600K. Because those Ryzen 5 7600 CPUs, despite being 6 cores, outperform the 5800X, a last generation 8-core CPU. Once again, cores aren't everything for gaming. It comes down to single-threaded performance. And why even bother getting a 5800X when a 5700X is more or less going to be within a stone's throw in terms of overall performance of the 5800X, but it's gonna cost you about 40 bucks less. So this is kind of a pointless CPU. C tier. All right, 12700K. I might give this a bit of a harsh rating, but that's just because the Ryzen 5 7600 and 7600X are faster than it, and they're cheaper. And there's one other CPU we're gonna cover soon that's about $20 more. No, about like 40 bucks more. But it is substantially better in performance, and it's from Intel as well. So the 12700K, even though it's on a nice discount, and although it again has 8 cores and 4 E-cores, like I said, cores don't mean everything. Single-threaded performance does. And there are just simply newer CPUs than this in the same price range, meaning I'm gonna put this, I'm gonna put it at the top of C tier. Then the 5600X3D. This is the first Ryzen 5000 X3D V-Cache chip that we've come across so far in the ranking. And although this is an excellent CPU, it is a bit overpriced, especially for a 6-core CPU that's last generation, and it's only available at Micro Center stores across the US. So if you're international, you can't get your hands on the CPU. But in the use case scenario where you're able to get your hands on it, it is a fantastic CPU as an upgrade if you're already on an AMD AM4 Ryzen based system. So I would not build a new PC around this CPU. But if you're on a current Ryzen system, upgrading to it is a smart choice. So I'll go ahead and put this in C tier below the 12700K. Then the 13500. I love i5 500 series CPUs because they're kind of pointless. They're in between the 400 series and the 600 series. They're kind of in a no man's ground. They aren't overclockable. Their pricing is always stupid. And the 13500 at $250 literally doesn't make any sense because you can get the 13600K for the exact same price right now as of filming this video. And this CPU is going to offer a substantially better gaming performance. So you have 13400, 3500, yeah, below the 4500, it's a pointless CPU. Unlike the 13600K, this in my opinion is Intel's best CPU they've released on the LGA 1700 socket. It really has everything you need if you're a gamer. It has a good amount of cores, plenty of E-cores, and a lot of threads, and is a good step up from the 12600K in terms of overall performance. And I don't see most gamers needing more than a 13600K. At $250, you should honestly stop right here if you want an Intel-based system. This is it. The 13600K is a very well-rounded CPU, and I believe also it's one of the few Intel CPUs above $200 that beats AMD in terms of price to performance, which is AMD's strong suit in the upper CPU price category. The 13600K is definitely the unicorn of Intel's LGA 1700 lineup. It's gonna go to the very top of A tier. Now the Ryzen 9 5900X is a pointless CPU. It's a 12-core CPU on AMD's old socket. Why bother building a new PC around this or even upgrading to it? Because you look at that CPU right there, the 5800X3D, that is the go-to CPU upgrade for all current AMD Ryzen AM4 users. But if you're building a new system, don't even bother with a 5900X. Who cares if it's 12 cores? It's slow. It's slow for the money. Let's say it again. Cores don't mean everything. Single-threaded performance does. I'm gonna put this at the bottom of D tier. Now the 5800X3D will go down as probably the best CPU upgrade CPU ever made. Because if you're already on an AMD Ryzen AM4 based system, this is the CPU to upgrade to. Because in current benchmarks, it still hangs with like modern Intel and Ryzen CPUs that are a lot newer despite it being older, and that's all thanks to its 3D V cache. So in terms of performance, even for its money, is really nice. But I wouldn't recommend building a new system around it because it's gonna be on an older generation AMD platform that uses older DDR4 RAM. And if you're already gonna be spending that much money on a CPU, why not just get a 7700 or 7700X or a 13600K? But it's still a great CPU. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this at the top of B tier. There we go. Oh, the 14600K. Well, at $300 right now, okay, let's get this out of the way. There was no uplift in performance between 13th gen and 14th gen Intel processors, which was really upsetting. Basically, all of these 14th generation CPUs you're gonna see come out are basically rebranded 13th generation CPUs, but they're gonna cost more. So they're basically pointless, which is upsetting. Like the 14600K, which is basically a 13600K in disguise, but costs about $50 more, is not worth it. We're gonna put this at the top of waste of sand. Now the 7700 and 7700X could be better value CPUs depending on their price. If they're selling for below $300 or right at $300 USD, that's really good. But if they're selling above that, like around $330, then I wouldn't really consider them because you are within a stone's throw of the 7800X3D, which that later on in this video is gonna get a really good ranking. But the 7700 and 7700X on their own are pretty good depending on the price. So they're gonna get a decent ranking from me. I'm going to put them, I'm gonna put them above the 5800X3D just because they're on the newer AMD platform, that being AM5. And if they are on a nice discount, they're better CPUs than the 5800X3D. But the 13700K is also on kind of a nice discount. You really don't need any more than this for an Intel CPU, especially if you're a gamer, because this is from time to time receiving some really nice discounts. I think right now this is selling for $360 USD. And performance-wise, it stacks up pretty nicely even versus AMD in this price range. Versus the 7700 and 7700X, the 13700K is faster. I know, it's kind of goofy. It's meant to compete with these CPUs right here. So I think I gotta put this at the top of B tier probably. Actually, I'll do this. I'll put it in between because the 7700 is going to be objectively cheaper than the 7700X. Yeah, it's a toss-up. I'll leave it like that. Yeah, I'll leave it like that. What isn't a toss-up is the 12900KS. It's pointless. Why buy an older Core i9 processor? Because once again, cores aren't everything. And if you're getting a CPU that is older than say a 13700K, what that means is that it's gonna have slower single-threaded performance because it's on an older architecture. Those extra cores and threads of the 12900K would bring you over the 13700K aren't gonna be beneficial to adding any more gaming performance. Therefore, we're gonna put it in the waste of sand category. Ooh, this is the one I've been waiting for. AMD is going to regret making the 7800X3D. Because ever since AMD introduced 3D V-Cache to their CPUs, they've basically officially taken the CPU gaming performance crown from Intel. And the problem with these X3D CPUs is that they kind of make the rest of AMD's CPU lineup that aren't 3D V-Cache CPUs around it pointless. Like, why bother getting more expensive CPUs than the 7800X3D when its 8-core layout is perfect for achieving the best gaming performance when it comes to benchmark charts. And in terms of pricing, because it's an 8-core CPU, you can get this for $350, which is only about $40 more expensive than the 7700X or 7700. And it's cheaper at times over the 13700K. And even if this CPU jumps up to $400, it's still very much worth it. Therefore, easy S tier recommendation. I would not be surprised if we see the 7800X3D outperform AMD's next generation of 8000 CPUs just because those 8000 CPUs at launch probably won't feature any 3D V-Cache. But in AMD fashion, they'll probably introduce a Ryzen 8000 3D V-Cache series in the future after that, and those will be the CPUs to have. So if you buy a 7800X3D, I don't think AMD is gonna like you, because you won't feel inclined to upgrade from it for eternity. Anyways, like what I was just saying, it's kind of pointless to get the 7900 or 7900X for gaming because they're 12-core CPUs, and the most efficient layouts for gaming are gonna be 8 or 16 cores. So unless you just want those extra cores for bragging rights, I kind of view them as pointless. So I'm gonna put them in C tier. The 4100, yeah, we'll put them right there. They're just in a weird spot and I don't like them for gaming. Just like the 14700K, because it is a rebranded 13700K for $50 more. Hooray, that is gonna go in the waste of sand category, woo! All right, the 5950X. All right, class, what have I been telling you for the longest part of this video? Cores don't mean everything. This is AMD's flagship CPU from like 4 or 5 years ago. 4 years ago, actually. And although it's a 16-core CPU, its single-threaded performance is like that of a 5800X. Not gonna be a whole lot faster. In fact, the 5800X3D is going to outperform the 5950X. I only see this CPU being worth it for users who are already on an AMD Ryzen AM4 based system and they know they need 16 cores. I'm gonna put this at the top of the waste of sand category because it's not completely useless for the reason I just said, but it's mostly going to be useless. But what's also pretty useless is the 7900X3D, because although it has that 3D V-cache label on it, only 6 of those cores can utilize the 3D V-cache that makes that CPU so fast in the first place. And its price is not the best either. The 7900X3D is not the best showing from AMD, just because the best layouts for X3D CPUs are going to be 8 and 16 core layouts. So it's not gonna get a good rating from me, although it is very fast still because it is a 3D V-cache CPU. I'm gonna put it at the top of D tier. Yeah. What's also kind of pointless, if you're loving these segues, is the 13900KS. This is probably the least egregious of the current i9s you can buy because it has the best blend of performance and pricing, but who needs an i9? Okay, I do, because I'm a professional content creator and a hardware enthusiast, and I need those integrated graphics for decoding this kind of footage here on my DaVinci timeline while graded. But for gamers, pointless. So I'm gonna put this here above the 12900K. Now the 7950X, this is a tough recommendation because within $40 of this, you can pick up the 7950X3D, and that features the 3D V-cache in a 16 core layout, and it actually works kind of well. And the power draw on the 7950X3D is much lower than the 7950X, and it will still outperform it for gaming. So like the 7950X is kind of pointless, honestly. So I'm gonna put it in D tier just below the 7900X3D, because once again, it doesn't feature any V-cache. If you're someone who knows you're gonna need a lot of cores and threads for beyond gaming, cool. But for gaming alone, pointless. Because you might as well get the 7950X3D if you want it all. And this is going to get a pretty good ranking from me because it's the 7800X3D, just double the cores, although it's still gonna be slower than the 7800X3D. But I'm gonna put this probably at the bottom of A tier because it's definitely an A tier CPU. Just what brings it down this low is its expensive price. And the fact that the 7800X3D is faster with half the cores, half the threads, and about $200 less. Oh, and then the 14900K, no. And then okay. Why do I have the i5-12500 here? Well, that's basically because you can't even buy it. And it's a 500 series i5 CPU, which as I said with the 13500 is a very awkward CPU to rank because it's kind of in no man's land. And I think nobody bought the i5-12500, which is why you can't even get it right now. And if you're thinking of getting it, you're dumb. So we're gonna put it at the very bottom of Waste of Sand. And there you have it. That is my ranking of all of the CPUs you can buy in 2024 before we get AMD's official Ryzen 8000 CPUs this fall and Intel's new 15th generation CPUs as well. And if you enjoyed this tier list video, give it a like because it's been a while since the last one, so that'd be cool. And links to all of these CPUs will be in the description if you want to check any of them out for a new or current PC build you're working on. So with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and this is the ScatterVolt channel, signing out.